Hi folks, in the last video I showed you the box model, and in many ways it's pretty intuitive, you know, margins, borders, padding, not a big deal. You just can work with them and set your elements however you want. There are some peculiarities, however, which I want to show you in this video very shortly. So here we have two divs, okay, and one has an ID of top and one has an ID of bottom. They're both given a width and height of 100 px. But interestingly, when you look at the two boxes, you can see that the top one doesn't actually have, that one is much larger than the other. So what's the deal with that? And that's because when, by default anyway, the way CSS calculates width and height is it includes the padding as well as the border. So that's included in your width. So instead of being 100 px, it's going to add roughly, 20. It's going to add these additional pixels to the width and the height. And so that's why, even though you've specified that these boxes should be the same, they're not. So there is a way to actually change CSS so that when it calculates the width and height of your box, it actually includes the padding, or it'll conform to the actual width and height you put in, and make the border and the padding be part of that width. And the way you do that is if you include the box sizing property. So let me just add that now. We're going to use the universal selector, and then if we say box sizing border box, now you get something that's probably a lot more sane and more intuitive for most circumstances. In fact, in almost all my projects, I will set the box sizing to border box because I just find it much easier to work with. So it's something you may want to also do. The second peculiarity I wanted to sort of call attention to is the way that margins are calculated between sort of elements. So if we add a margin bottom to this, let's say make it 30 pixels, okay, it's behaving the way we'd expect it to. But let's now add a margin top to this bottom element. Say we'll put in margin top of also 30 pixels. So intuitively you would think that, well, this is just going to add them together and that bottom square is going to, jog down a little bit. But watch, I just added it and nothing happened. And this is, you can call this margin collapse. What it does is what CSS does is it picks the larger of the two margins and it applies that one. It doesn't add them together. So you could make this 40 and it will become 40. But it doesn't add them together. So if we make this 30 again, here it just takes 30 px. If you were to make this 15 px, it won't reduce it because the 30 px is what it's using. So just be aware of these two sort of idiosyncrasies of the box model. First of all, the way box sizing is calculated, and that you may want to use the border box value to make your calculations more sane, and also be aware that in some circumstances you may be affected by this margin collapse issue.